So what we have is a product called HPE OneView for Microsoft System Center, and it's a collection of tools that is really going to help you when you are using System Center. The whole idea here is that you use System Center for your day-to-day things. You use SCOM for health monitoring and alerting. You may be using Configuration Manager for driver and firmware updates. If you're in a Hyper-V shop, you might be using SCVMM. And if you're using HPE OneView as the infrastructure management tool for the underlying HPE hardware, there's a lot of value that's brought in that makes it so that you don't have to switch back and forth. You're going to be able to not only bring information from OneView into the System Center product, but you're also able to drive configuration back down through that and use OneView as the configuration engine. So things like, what I've been talking about is simplifying administration by having one less tool, having to switch back and forth. We know that there's not really everybody talks about a single pane of glass, and we know that that's just not true. But what you want to do is you want to minimize that. You want to minimize the number of tools you use. Think about using OneView as I've set OneView up, I do my configurations, and then I kind of leave it, and now I go to an upper level System Center type tool to do other things, and that means I don't have to switch back and forth between those for my day-to-day operations. Reducing planned and unplanned downtime with things like proactive notifications, getting alerts before a piece of hardware has failed, manage changes proactively, being able to do firmware and driver updates, those types of things. Bare metal deployment, we assist with that, and then firmware and driver updates. So all of that life cycle management that you're using System Center for, you can use OneView to help leverage that to make it even easier and more consistent and reliable. And that's one of the key things. Consistency, repeatability, and reliability are major factors to improving uptime. If you have an inconsistent, trying to track down inconsistent configurations will drive you crazy. I've got a cluster, and are they all configured the same? I'm not sure. And how do I track that down? How do I ensure that? Well, OneView can help you do that, and then combined with things like System Center Virtual Machine Manager, you can ensure that those things are all configured the same. So trying to be that repeatable, consistent experience is going to help you get a lot less aggravated, and be more efficient and productive as well. So a couple of key pillars of OneView that we tie in to bring out the value of the combined integration of OneView and System Center. So we want to be able to help deploy the infrastructure faster. This comes in a couple of different ways. So it comes in, one of the things that OneView can do is it works on, it's a template-driven product. So here's a scenario, here's a use case. So I'm going to bring in a brand new cluster. And it's a 5-node cluster because that's all the number of fingers I have on my hand. But I've got 5 brand new bare metal servers. And I want to make sure that they are, from the very start, before I even put an OS on them, that they are configured exactly the same. They might be HPE Blade servers or Synergy, and they may have Virtual Connect. I may have additional networking components. I might have 3-par storage and Nimble storage. And I want to make sure that all the connections are exactly the same. Each NIC in each server is connected to the same exact network. That's really important, so I don't have to troubleshoot this down the road. Well, how OneView can help you out with that is that within OneView, because I said we're template-driven, you create something called a server profile template, and that template contains all the network definitions, all the storage connection definitions, all the BIOS settings, your ILO settings. I define that once within the template, and I apply the template across all of those bare metal servers, and now before I install the OS on them, I've guaranteed that every one of them is configured exactly the same, all the connections are exactly the same. So the other way that I can use that is I can then go in and change something in the template. Let's say I wanted to do a firmware update. I could go change the firmware baseline in the template, and the OneView would recognize, that now all those servers are out of compliance with that, and I could initiate a firmware update. So again, OneView is providing that configuration engine, but by integrating it in with the System Center tools, you get to use the familiar tools that you already work with, your day-to-day operations, and ultimately, increasing your productivity, increasing the uptime of your overall data set. And here I'm showing you a health dashboard. This is an integration that we have with System Center Operations Manager, or SCOM. And what we're doing is just showing you, a dashboard, so I get a quick at-a-glance view. I actually monitor the health of the OneView appliance itself. I can have many of those. I can have 5 or 10 OneView appliances, and it'll all of the components that are managed by OneView will show up in the same place. The servers themselves, the enclosures, the server profiles, which is this idea of a template, the logical and physical interconnects, uplink sets, storage pools. We've recently added a new component here that's not shown on here for the ProLiant Azure Stack solution. So if I have 500 servers and I have a 16-node Azure Stack cluster, I can now be able to see those 16 nodes all in their own separate call out, rather than trying to search through a list of 500 servers and figure out where my ProLiant Azure Stack cluster is. So it's a standard management pack in that it acts like all other management packs in SCOM. I can do alert forwarding. I can send alerts on up to higher level third-party management or ticketing tools. So it acts just like any other management pack that you're familiar with. And all of the alerts, there's a master roll-up. There's a separate section. You can see networking and profiles and so on. So you have a folder for each one of these. All of those roll up into a master active alert section. So again, for health monitoring and alerting, our OneView management pack is very valuable. Now, another thing that's important on this, so OneView does not care about the operating system. I have to be careful because I'm at Ignite here. Not everybody runs Hyper-V. Okay, I'll just leave it at that. We don't care. So you could have, when you look at the server health, and you see all the list of servers on there, we don't care if they're running Windows or Hyper-V or Linux or VMware. We don't care. You'll get the health of those servers. So I know a lot of you use SCOM to, even though you may be running, for instance, ESXi as your hypervisor, and that's okay. With this management pack, will support that. So if you are running Hyper-V, and in this is for an HPE blade, like a C-class blades, like a BL460 with Virtual Connect, or an HPE Synergy, we have a plugin. It's actually technically called an add-in to System Center Virtual Machine Manager. And some of the things that you get is the ability to visualize the fabric. And now there's some interesting things here. I'm not calling this out, but there's some of the value we provide here is doing what really looks simple on here. And if I show you a live demo of it, you'll see it really looks simple, but it's really hard stuff to do. And what we do is we map the physical NIC ports, the actual NICs themselves, the ports, and we map those to the OS adapter names. And if you've ever tried to do that, that's really, really hard to do. What physical NIC port maps to which, OS connector 37? I have no idea what that means, but we help you map that out. We map it in a tabular format, and here we actually map it in a graphical format. So here I have my virtual machines in my server. I have the ports on the back of the NIC. I have the connections out to the Virtual Connect modules in the back, the uplink ports, out to top of rack switch. And you can see the port number of the top of rack switch. So I can visualize this. This is a really simple diagram. When you get into more complex diagrams, this is very useful for doing things like verifying that my NIC teaming is set up properly. Do I have the redundant paths? Sometimes when you're trying to do that in a table, it's really hard to do. Here I can visualize it and I can map out, okay, yeah, This one here is going out to 2 different flex farms. That's good. I've got redundancy here and so on. So very useful for visualizing your fabric from the VM to the network edge. Another thing that you can do in our Virtual Machine Manager add-in is a HPE OneView server profile template-driven deployment. And so this is an integrated process where you want to, and I talked about that scenario of my one template to my 5-node cluster. You can do this directly from within SCVMM, where I would specify the VMM profile, OneView server profile template, and then it comes up with a list of all the bare metal servers that meet the requirements specified by those 2 templates. And I click on which one I want to deploy to, and off I go. And it will actually do the deployment. It will make sure all the networking is consistent across all those nodes. I can do this for a bare metal cluster, brand new cluster, or I could use this to add nodes to an existing cluster. Another thing that we can do in VMM, this one actually does not use OneView integration. It uses a product called the HPE ProLiant Updates Catalog. So if you've ever done driver and firmware updates from HPE, you're probably familiar with the SPP, the service pack for ProLiant. What we do is we take the SPP, which is drivers and firmware, and we repackage it into a format that's consumable by WSUS, and then WSUS pushes it out, or actually VMM pulls it in from WSUS, and I can then go in and set a baseline within VMM across the whole cluster. I can scan against that baseline, and if the cluster is out of compliance, you see that it's not compliant against the baseline that I had set for my clusters here, I can do what's called a remediate. And what the remediate will do is say, okay, you're going to do this firmware update to these 2 servers. And if I click on live migration here, it's going to do a rolling, non-disruptive update. So it'll go to the first, the first server, put it in maintenance mode, live migrate all the VMs, apply the firmware update, reboot, etc., bring it back online, and just go on that one by one down the server. Down each server in the cluster. Now the cool thing about this is that this is built into Virtual Machine Manager. We just provide, usually with this ProLiant Updates catalog, we just provide the drivers and the firmware to do that. So you can also use this for Microsoft updates. So if you had some patch that you wanted to put in, you could put that in the baseline as well. So the baseline can have hardware, stuff like firmware and drivers, Microsoft patches, OS patches, whatever you may want to do, however you like to do your maintenance, but it does it in a rotating, non-disruptive fashion. OneView for Microsoft System Center is great for customers who are already standardized on System Center. If you're using HPE hardware, you need to be looking at OneView. If you're not looking at OneView, I'm telling you need to. HPE OneView is the infrastructure and configuration management tool for HPE servers. You can download it for free. It has 2 licensing models. One is what's called a standard license. It gives you your basic health monitoring and alerting. It's free. There's no license keys or anything. You just go install it. You're going to download it, install it. It's OneView is an appliance. You register your servers as what's called a monitored mode, and off you go. If you want to take advantage of some of the more advanced features like the server profile templates, you need what's called an advanced license, and those are a fee-based license. If you have HPE Synergy, all that's already included. But once you have OneView, you can start using the integrations for System Center, even if you're using the free version of it. So if you're not using OneView, I would strongly encourage you to go out and just download the OneView appliance and start playing around with it. Try OneView out. You go get the free download. If you want to play around with the advanced capabilities of it, there's a 60-day free trial. So you don't have to get license keys or anything. You just go tell it that you're importing these servers as managed, and you can take advantage of all of the the advanced features, go play around with it and test it out. So there's no additional fees on top of that for the system center integration. We do also have integration with log analytics that I'm going to be talking about tomorrow. And we have some other integrations with other partners like VMware.